Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And today I'm joined by a good longtime friend. I was trying to figure out how many years we've known each other through the wedding show. And we finally got to work together a couple weekends ago. And that wasn't the most unfortunate situation in the world either. It is Irene Jones with IJ Photo. And why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do. I'm so excited for this.
Hey, Reed. Hi, I'm Irene. I own IJ Photo, and yeah, I'm a wedding photographer. Been working in weddings for 20 years and love it.
Yeah, and and it really does just kind of seem like you're everywhere, whether you're working or, working for other people or other people working for you. It just seems kind of like your web is vast. Would you agree with that?
It would be nice to feel that way. I think it's probably easier to see it on the outside. I always think I'm just living in a cave by myself.
But you stay busy and you love what you do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So what is it about, weddings in particular that kind of excites you? I know you do a lot of, other things as well, but kind of what is it about weddings photography that kind of gets your juices flowing?
I like storytelling. I've always been interested in ways to tell stories. I, at one point, thought about being a journalist. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll be a novelist. I just wanted to do something that communicated the human experience. And then photography kind of fell in my lap right around, I would say high school. And I just thought this was a really cool way that you could share a story as well as create something that was visual and communicated quickly.
Yeah, and you have such a wonderful story on your website about kind of growing up and your mother taking photos. And do you care to share that? It's such a wonderful kind of thing to go through.
Oh my gosh, this story embarrasses my mom all the time. My mom was an avid photographer, but she is terrible, like the world's worst photographer. In fact, she has a slideshow on her screensaver on her computer at home of every bad photo she's ever taken, but she doesn't realize that they're bad. Like she won't even take out the bad exposure. She won't even take out blurry stuff. Everything she's ever shot is on the screensaver, and people come over and they just watch it for hours and kind of laugh about how bad her photography is. But she was always taking pictures, and she was documenting every minute of our lives, and it just became something that was a part of my experience as a child, and I connected to her that way. And then, when I picked up a camera, I wanted to do something a little bit better. I wanted to kind of elevate the thing that she was doing. She was documenting history, but I wanted to tell the story of families and people.
Yeah, and it is so funny because, and I see posts and discussions all the time about, obviously we want everything to be perfect and for photo or video or, anything. And ultimately, even if it's capturing something that, and you're thinking like, man, this is, the exposure's off or the focus is off, but you might come to find out later on from a client, right? Like I've heard stories, that was, my grandma and we wanted that photo or whatever, right? That people really do care about kind of the emotion and the memories of that. And sometimes it is hard to kind of overlook that as like perfectionists as we are,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's pictures that my mom has that are, like I said, terrible, but are super important because that's the one photo with a great grandma that I met one time when I was 6, that stuff's valuable.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy years from now when like everybody has, photos of every second of everything. And it's going to be, right? Do you ever think about that?
Oh, absolutely. My kids are like, Mom, you don't have a picture of me from when I was 6 months and 3 weeks old. And I'm like, I'm sorry that I failed you as a parent.
So you said you got your camera in high school, and what was the kind of the growth in from that? Were you just kind of doing stuff, around behind the, whatever? How did you kind of grow as a photographer from there?
Well, I started doing our school journalism newspaper thing, and they needed a photographer, and they handed me a digital camera, and this shows how old I am, that you actually put floppy disks into. And each floppy disk would hold 2 images, and you could maybe print those images like 5x7 black and white. It was super low tech, but I thought that was amazing, and it was fun to play with. And so when a friend of mine in our journalism class said, "Hey, my older brother's marrying this girl to get a green card, and we need a photographer. If I give you $90, will you show up?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" So my very first wedding was a green card wedding, and there was a guy from immigration chilling in the front row to make sure it was legit.
How did that go? How were the photos?
They were terrible. Well, at the time, of course, I thought that I was like God's gift to photography, of course. But yeah, it got the job done. We got some family pictures and everybody is happy. But yeah, I've hopefully improved since then.
Yeah, just a little bit. That's so funny. It's so funny to think about just trying to envision that camera too. Most of the people in news, I never had to do like the whole tape to tape thing. That I was kind of that first generation that really everything I've ever done has been digital, except for like they forced us to expose like film in college, but, yeah, it's just funny to think like just the waves of generations and people nowadays probably don't even know what a floppy disk is. So
probably not. Yeah, my kid said one time, like, "Mom, that looks like the save icon." And I'm like, "Yeah, baby, that's what that is."
That was like the story. There was something about like the phone, like something on the iPhone or the app for the phone, and people were like, "What is that?" Or what is what is that supposed to be? Yeah, it looks like the save icon. That's too funny. So did you go to school then for photography? You said you did journalism in high school. How did that go?
Yeah, I actually went to the Art Institute of Seattle. RIP on that. They closed last year. But yeah, I got a degree in commercial photography. Thought I was going to be a fashion photographer and work for catalogs and J. Crew and do modeling and stuff like that. And got into fashion a little bit and realized fashion sucked and I wasn't happy. So another friend was like, "Hey, do you want to shoot a wedding?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? I'm poor." And I shot another wedding and I was like, this is something that had those cool elements of fashion, but didn't necessarily come with the heroin addiction or the terrible people.
Oh my God. So how did that go then? How did that wedding go?
That one went much better. I was really excited about it. I brought a friend along from school and, we were geeking out about how to do indoor lighting and outdoor lighting and how to do all of the different elements that go into a wedding, and really picked up quickly that you have to have a lot of different skill sets to shoot a wedding. You have to be good at shooting details. You have to be good at working with people. You have to be good at, time management, all of these things. And I liked that it was a confluence of a lot of different skills.
Yeah, that's true. I think that it's very undervalued. Yeah, like you said, kind of like the social aspects and being able to do stuff in a short period of time and being able to work, where you got 20 minutes to get whatever details you need to get done before, whatever you have your one chance to do. I mean, it's still kind of that exhilarating rush, right? Kind of like, I guess, like fashion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then were you always going to kind of do photography then? Did you have any other kind of fun part-time jobs along the way? I know you met your husband, I was reading at the movie theater, right?
Yeah. In high school, senior year, I met my husband. We both worked at the same movie theater. And I kind of, as soon as I picked up a camera, I knew that's where I wanted to go. I knew that photography was for me. The other option was Congress, so I think I chose the right path.
What do you mean?
Oh, I used to joke that I was going to be a senator.
Oh, you do have kind of an official sounding name. I could see that. Senator Jones. So you met your husband. I was reading about putting a trash can on your head and trying to get his attention after work. Yeah,
I'm kind of a dork, and I don't mind embarrassing myself to get a good laugh, which has come in handy in my work. But he's this really straight-laced, kind of quiet, deep-thinking individual, and I couldn't get his attention. So I was sitting in the box office one day trying to flirt with him, and having no flirting skills, I was like, well, there's a trash can right there. What if I stuck it on my head and acted like an idiot? Maybe he'd pay attention to me. And I did it, and it got stuck below my elbows, so I couldn't get it off by myself. So I'm sitting here in this garbage can when he's trying to finish up his night and counting out money, and he's just completely ignoring me. But it worked because we went out on a date not too long after that, and we've been married for 15 years.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, how was your wedding? What was that like?
Oh my gosh, my wedding was such a hot mess. I have a big family and a really different relationship to like organization with my family. Like, I'm very organized. I like things to go according to plan. I write lists. I make diagrams. They are not that kind of people. So we got married in Portland, and then we had another reception in Seattle the next day. And I kind of was expecting everybody to help, like read the diagrams, read the flow charts and stuff, and figure out where things were supposed to go. They just completely ignored it and did it their own way. And it was fine because, you know, all the people I liked were there and we had a good time.
Oh my God. How were the photos from your wedding?
Awful. I went cheap. I didn't know better at the time. I had only shot a couple weddings, and I went to the Seattle wedding show and I found the cheapest photographer in the place, and I didn't really care. The photos looked kind of decent, and I thought, this will work. Dropped down my $600. That's another, example of how old I am. And they came out and they shot stuff that sucked, and I wasn't happy at all. And I learned the lesson the hard way, that you get what you pay for.
Yeah, but so that's crazy. So you've had a very long life with the Seattle wedding show, because that's obviously kind of how because then you've been participating in that for right as long as I can remember. Yeah,
I think this next year will be 7 years.
That's crazy. That's good. Good. So you guys got married. You had a couple weddings under your belt, and then I was kind of reading about you opening up a studio, and do you want to kind of get into that part of it?
Yeah. So around like 2011, I was thinking I wanted to expand beyond weddings, and I wanted to do portraits too. So I opened up a studio in Everett and was really busy, like working 80, 90 hours a week, doing high school seniors, doing newborns, families, weddings, all of it. And that winter, I caught mono. And sometimes when you get mono, your spleen can become enlarged. And all it takes is a good kick to the gut, and your spleen will rupture. And I had a 2-year-old whose favorite thing to do is headbutt people. And we're pretty sure that what happened is he headbutted me one too many times and my spleen ruptured. So that December, I went in the hospital for a good week and a half and nearly bled to death. That was pretty fun. But I came out of it after about 3.5 months of bed rest. And my doctor told me I probably shouldn't work as hard as I was doing. So I had another hard lesson where I had to figure out what work-life balance looked like for me. And that meant closing the studio, and it meant going back to just weddings, because weddings, first of all, was what I loved. But secondly, it wasn't honestly as hard as doing some of the other stuff.
That's crazy. Yeah. Cause being employed, whatever you want to say. I mean, I always worry about that too, right? Where it's like such it's so tied to you and kind of on your shoulders. And, what do you do if like that happens and you have this like life-changing experience? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, luckily I only had a couple clients booked for that coming year, and they were incredibly understanding about it. I still feel bad about missing a couple of those weddings because, I really wanted to be there for those people. But it turned out okay. And by the next summer, I was back and on my feet, and things were good.
So you kind of always, I mean, it sounds like from kind of day one, like you said, you knew you wanted to do photo. And I mean, have you always kind of been self-employed like that? I mean, have you always kind of done your own thing?
Yeah, after I worked at the movie theater and met my husband, I took a job at JCPenney's doing portraits in their little photo studio for about a year. And then I worked at like Tiny Computers back when you could buy computers at the mall. And that was my last job before I worked for myself.
That's crazy. Yeah, I just always remember I used to have a guy that did drone stuff for me, and he was always really proud about that, right? That he'd always kind of had his own, working odd jobs, but never really working for the man, like,
right.
Where because I kind of had to pull myself away from that. And so What is it? Were you ever nervous? Did it just kind of go? I mean, it just seems like it just kind of built upon itself. I mean, obviously, you've been doing this for a long time now.
Reed, I am too stupid to be nervous about stuff like that. I just get excited about things and I'm really passionate and then I go for it headlong without really thinking.
So did you know when when you wanted to set up kind of, your business and what kind of, brand you wanted to have, what kind of clients you wanted to attract? Did you just want to do as much as you can? Was it hard to kind of make that path or?
I've always been looking for a particular client. Like I like average, ordinary people because I feel like their stories aren't represented enough. I love telling stories about, a couple who were next door neighbors or something when they were kids and then they ended up together, or people that, came from across the country, Sleepless in Seattle style. I think that so often, we think that romance has to be this like big kind of movie epic thing, or it has to be hard. But there's a lot of people that have great stories, and once you get to talking to them, you can find that out. So I like people that are just in love and are interested in, building a relationship with one another. So if they fit that category, I want to work with them.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, especially nowadays with like, online and Instagram and Pinterest, and there's just like all this confluence of, huge, just all sorts of crazy stuff, and people getting married or, getting married like above the Grand Canyon on nets and all this crazy stuff. And like, but I mean, that's kind of, I feel like we're a similar, breed too, where it's like you just two happy people and a family, and maybe they met in school or like you guys and work together, and it just kind of goes from there, right?
Yeah, I think that everybody's story is valuable. And just because someone did something epic for their wedding doesn't make their love any less important than somebody who's like, hey, I know a great wedding venue down the street from where I grew up. Let's go there.
No, absolutely. So what is Irene, what does a wedding for you kind of look like? What is the process of kind of working with you, and how do you kind of try to differentiate whether it's style or customer service, or how do you try to kind of do your thing?
I want my clients to not feel like they have to spend too much time worrying about a camera. So I spend a lot of time telling them, don't look in the camera, don't even think about, what you're doing. I'll give you direction the whole way through. 90% of my clients say to me, I don't know what to do in front of the camera. We don't have a lot of pictures of ourselves. Like even our selfies suck. And so I'm always trying to help them feel really natural and just kind of enjoy the experience. And everybody always says, oh, that was way more fun than I thought it would be. And I'm like, yeah, that's the idea. If you're miserable during this process, then you're going to look miserable and you're going to remember being miserable when you look at the photos later. I also try to just get to know people. When you sit down and have a real conversation with someone, you find out things. You find out, oh yeah, we've got a dog and we love, going to this particular park or something like that. Those little details can help fill in the gaps of a story and give you ideas of how to talk to someone to make them comfortable in front of the camera.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think it's something that's not, talked about enough. Like people do get really nervous, or it's really hard, or, people aren't used to being in front of the camera. I mean, both of our weddings this weekend were like, they were just tapped out because I just think people aren't used to having, 5,000 photos of them taken and, portraits and family and all this stuff. And, we just, both of them, they just were totally, kind of just really fried at the end. And how do you, and I feel bad, right? Because I'm talking with Dorothy about it, and I'm like, I feel like, we build up an endurance for that. And, you're kind of used to going through this 10-hour day or 8 or whatever, and kind of going through that. Like, how do you try to make it easier for people, or how do you kind of work on that? Because this is something that I've just been thinking about a lot the last couple of days.
Oh, I try to keep it moving. That's for sure. I know when I've got a shot. And I tend to shoot pretty quickly. That way we can move on from things, one step to the next. If I feel like if we spend more than 5-10 minutes in one spot with a couple, they're going to get bored. I'm going to get bored. And so I try to find 5 to 7 different places during pictures with the couple so we can keep moving. And that really helps. And always, having the couple move in front of the camera is great too. Having them walking, having them jumping, running, spinning each other, kissing, any of those things, as long as they're not just standing there and thinking about how awkward they might feel in front of a camera.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I even have memories, if I'm like getting ready to edit something and I'm like, oh yeah, this is when we had to do like an hour and a half of family photos. Or like, I remember that like burden, like it kind of leaves feelings on you right afterward. Like those memories, right? Like it kind of you remember that, right? And so I think obviously if you're feeling that, then the couple's obviously got to be feeling that.
Oh yeah. And I tell a lot of dumb jokes, and that helps a lot too.
What's your best go-to dumb joke?
Oh, I don't have a best go-to. I tend to just say whatever ridiculous thing comes to mind. And generally it makes no sense and people just laugh because I sound stupid.
That's awesome. My favorite is, and you're welcome to steal this, is doing the family photos, and you get the big one and you go, all right, this is the most expensive Christmas card photo you're ever going to take. and it always gets a good laugh.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome to steal that. So you primarily, obviously shoot in Seattle and whatever. I mean, do you like the area up here? Do you like the variety? Do you like, the community here? Obviously you have tons of friends and support. I mean, talk about kind of, like you said, you feel like you live in a cave, or I think we get stuck a lot in, and I do too. I spend a lot of time in front of this computer editing, and, obviously doing the podcast and stuff is a great way to network as well. But how do you, get along up here and get to know people, and do you enjoy that aspect of it?
Well, I love Seattle. I'm a native. Grew up here since I was 5, moved from Portland when I was little. And it's always been home. And I love the fact that the Northwest has such a good variety of people and places and things to do stuff. I mean, it's great that I can drive 30 minutes and go hiking, and I can drive 30 minutes and end up at the beach, or an hour and a half and end up in Canada. I love the fact that we've got a lot of diversity here of things to do. And I love that as Seattle's grown, we're getting a lot more diversity of people too, which I think is great. I mean, it's one of those things where the more varieties of different people and things and places you can put into one area, the more interesting it gets. Like I'm a big fan of travel. If I didn't live here, I think I'd live in Manhattan, just because there's so many different people, so many different things to see, so many things to do. But to your second question, like how do I network? Just try to be myself and be a good person. Generally, like talk to everybody, be nice to everybody, because we all want that. We all want to be treated good.
Yeah, so I was just having a conversation with Michaela the other day with Sugar and Spice Events. The podcast just dropped today, and we were really talking about that too, how it does seem like Seattle, is a pretty warm, is a pretty friendly area. I hear stories a lot online and read about really a lot of chaos between vendors and photographers and video or planners or venues kind of, do you feel like Seattle is a pretty welcoming, obviously, I mean, I've only really primarily worked here, but what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I've traveled a lot and I've shot weddings all over the country and Mexico too. And I've never really had a problem with vendors anywhere. So I don't know if it's just the wedding community or if it's a wedding community in Seattle or what, but I know that when you come into a situation saying, hey, I want to help you, I want to work with you, things tend to go well.
How do you keep things fresh for you in terms of doing weddings? Some people, I think, outside the world think weddings, it's a lot of kind of rinse and repeat, week to week. How do you, make each couple unique and really focus on the details of those specific, memories?
Oh, that's a great question. I think first is getting to know the people. I try to find out what's different and unique about them. People do tend to, when you start asking them questions, especially here in the Northwest, they give you the same answers. Oh yeah, I'm an engineer and we like to go hiking. And I'm like, yeah. Tell me a little bit more. Like, I like hearing things like, my favorite soda is Fanta, because things like that give me little details into how you interact. And I like paying attention to those little things. And then when we get to the day of, I'm always trying to one up myself. Like, I think, what did I do last week? How can I do it better? And I've always got a shot list in my head of these ultimate shots that I want to take. And I'm looking for a way to improve every single time so it never gets stale.
Yeah, it's really tough, like you said, getting to know the people and especially for like, you work so closely with them all day. And it's like, once you book, you really got to figure out how you're going to connect with them day of, and it's so like tight and you're just with them, all day. And I just don't even think people really get that. Like, when you book your photo or video or whatever, like all day. And obviously we try to give them breaks and but it's like, you might as well be another member of the bridal party,
Absolutely. And I think too, it helps that I meet with my clients beforehand. I always do an in-person consultation, and then I insist on a 1-month consultation face-to-face with everybody where we walk through the venue. Even if it's a venue that I've shot at 100 times, I still want to go through and walk through and see what you like about it, because it's going to be different. Everybody does things for different reasons.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just because, like, obviously, like, even, you said the same kind of venue and someone might really love totally different aspects of it or totally view it. You go to shoot the same place 2 weeks in a row and it's set up totally different. And you're like, what were they thinking or whatever? Yeah. But, it makes sense to them,
Yep. Every time it's always different.
Talk about kind of your family and your home life. I know that that's, a huge part of who you are and what kind of makes you and what do you do when you're not photographing weddings?
Well, I'm a mom of 4, which is funny because everyone says that means like I've got 700 kids because I have 4 of them. But yeah, I've got a big family, came from a big family. I like being a mom. I like hanging out with my kids and doing weird stuff. We're always out trying to hike and explore. Last weekend, the kids didn't want to go with me, so I did Wallace Falls by myself, which was nice. But we're just average Pacific Northwesterners. We like to travel. Just took my 2 oldest kids to New York a couple weeks ago. I studied a lot of art history in college, so I was walking around quizzing my kids the whole time, like, tell me what the Greek classical period was all about. And can you tell me the difference between Art Deco architecture and the post-Roman revival? And my kids are like, what? So that was fun.
You would get along with Dorothy. Dorothy is an art history major too. I don't know any of that stuff, but at trivia, she cleans up on that part of it.
Yeah, I think we would get along.
And then like you said, you guys, love hiking and seeing the outdoors.
Yeah, we're big hikers. We try to go every weekend that we can. And I think I'm doing it for selfish reasons. I'm always kind of secretly scouting.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, and it gets the kids to play together, and get out from behind their screens.
How do you balance kind of now, obviously we talked about, with the studio and all of that and really having to focus on the work-life balance, obviously with 4 kids, how do you, manage all that?
A lot of it was learning how to spend less time behind my computer. And a lot of that came from just getting better at editing, took a lot more classes, spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos and, learning some better tricks of the trade. And some of it just comes from saying, hey, 5 o'clock hits, I'm done on Monday through Friday, and taking Mondays and Sundays off and saying, if I don't have a wedding on a Saturday and I don't have a wedding on a Sunday, then I'm taking Sunday off.
How do you, when you talk about being a better editor, cutting down time, do you think, because obviously that's something that, video people, I hear people that spend like hundreds of hours on stuff, but how do you're just more efficient now having done it a long time and kind of delivering, or how do you kind of work through that?
Yeah, my workflow has gotten a lot better because of practice, first of all. But secondly, I edit pretty clean. I don't spend a lot of time with tweaking colors and things like that to make them look like faded. I avoid trends. because, I feel like those are going to get outdated pretty quickly. And cleaner edits tend to just go a little bit quicker. That, and I used to do things where I would like pull out every single exit sign in a room, and I do a little bit less of that and more shoot kind of so there's less editing, and that helps.
Yeah, it's tough because we had a wedding that my other guy shot, my partner Matt shot, and I was like, oh yeah, I just kind of finished the base edit, and it took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, and he was like, what do you mean? Like, da, 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 da. And I'm like, dude, when after a while, once you've been doing it, I mean, you do just get used to being more efficient,
Yeah.
And I think even like people that do photography, when that's what you're doing and you're always in that mindset and kind of looking for stuff. And like you said, shooting and figuring out a way to, shoot it so you don't have to do as much work in post. I mean, I think that it speaks just to obviously people doing it a lot more and being a lot more, comfortable and efficient with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That, and I learned a long time ago that you should really only deliver the good stuff. For a long time I thought, oh, you know what? I shot 2,500 images. I'm going to give these clients 2,500 images. The only problem with that is they're only going to want a fifth of those. So many of them are going to be duplicates where I can tell the difference, but they're not going to see the difference. So I do a lot of editing down for images that are close or similar. So my clients don't have to spend hours and hours and hours editing through to find their perfect ones. They know that the final set is all of the perfect ones.
Yeah, it's like Dorothy and I will take like a selfie and there'll be like 2 identical ones. It's like, okay, well, which one of these is better? And you're like, it's the exact same photo.
It's the same photo. You're right.
It's just 1 second difference.
You spend years agonizing over that.
Oh yeah. And you were talking a lot about trends, and we've talked with people on the podcast too about that. I mean, it is tough nowadays where there are like definitely right now, like there are definite trends of, certain photographers and certain styles. And is that hard to like not, cause like I'm kind of the same way, like we just kind of do what we do. And I mean, there's video trends too. And obviously you want to like not be shooting like it's the 80s, but you also want it to be, so how do you kind of balance that between staying true to your style, but then also like, obviously you're trying, we're all trying to attract like young couples getting married,
So I feel like good taste never goes out of style. So you look for something that's classic and really beautiful because of the design elements and because of the styling. And then what's in the photo, of course, is going to change depending on the times. But artistry, especially good artistry, is always going to look good no matter what the trend is.
Yeah, it's some of the stuff, you just see things nowadays and you're like, this is just going to be so dated. It's like with the black and white with like the red flower or something, like that. What is that called? That
selective color.
Yeah, but it's stuff like that. I mean, what do you look at stuff nowadays and just think, God, in 5 years, this is going to look like this was really a 2019 wedding?
I think you can't help it because, I mean, the style of clothes, the style of what people want to do, there's always going to be some of that. But like I said, I mean, a beautiful wedding photo from like the 1950s that really shows light and composition and has all of that great structure to it is still going to look great today. I'm a huge fan of Audrey Hepburn, and she had a photographer that followed her through most of her career, and I've got several books of his work. And of course, his name is escaping me now, so that's going to suck. But all of his work of her, she looks amazing in all of it because of the lighting and the way that he styled her and the posing. And that stuff doesn't get old. You could do the exact same lighting and the exact same posing as Audrey Hepburn in the 50s and 60s, and it would still look just as fresh today.
That's a good point. We had a bride, I guess it was last weekend, and she got ready at her childhood home, and the mom had this huge framed picture of her wedding on the wall where she's getting ready, and it was like totally like my mom and dad had the same photo, and everybody's at like, what is it about like that 1980 or when the hell did they get married, probably 70 78, what is it about that style that just totally you can just pinpoint the exact kind of decade that those photos took place?
Oh, it's so true. You can really feel it. My oldest sister got married in like 96, and we had flower crowns and big poofy sleeves, and some of that's coming back, and I'm just cringing so hard about it.
That's funny. What do you wish more people thought of to ask, when it comes to like photography? Do you find like you're having a lot of the same conversations with people about, it could be anything, workflow or delivering images, or what do you wish more people just asked when it came to like shopping for a wedding photographer?
Oh my gosh, I wish they asked about logistics. Like, everybody asks about style, everybody asks about, timeline, but ask about when am I get my photos, how many am I going to get, and stuff like that, because those are the things you can compare vendor to vendor. I know style is so subjective that, that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You pick a style that you like. But knowing, here's the amount that I'm going to pay, here's the amount of images I'm going to get, here's the timeliness in which I'm going to get them, here's how I'm going to get them, what are some of the other things that the vendor puts into making your experience quality, those are quantifiable. That's an apples to apples comparison where, say, my style compared to some other photographers isn't going to be apples to apples.
Yeah, it is funny that the people ask that, and like there was someone who was posting the other day online asking about like getting sneak peek images or whatever. It's like, well, you can like look at. I think it's easy to look at someone's whatever and see like, do they do that stuff? Or right. You can, like you said, you can look. These are tangible things. Like, does this photographer do any of that? Do they post anything? Do they do same day slideshows, or do they do a big blog? I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff that you can see or not see, right? And compare that as well too.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to ask about those details because, if you assume, you're never going to know.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of people do just kind of assume and then they don't know, right?
Right.
Do you feel like people do enough research in that regard?
Oh, absolutely not. Almost every client meeting, I ask them, a bunch of questions about their day and get all of the details that I can pull out of them, talk to them about how they met and stuff like that. And then I say, what do you want to ask me? And then they look at each other like, we were supposed to ask you questions? And I'm like, yeah, you're interviewing me. This is a job interview. You should have lots of questions for me. And not just the ones that you pulled off the knot. Like, you should want to know how this is going to go down and what the legal terms are going to be because you're signing a contract.
Isn't that the best? Because I've gotten that too, where it's like a copy and pasted bullet point question list of like, and it is from like the Nod, or it's one of those sites like, what should you ask your wedding vendor? And they're like,
right.
And I'm always like, I do have like pages devoted to all this stuff. If you really, so I don't have to write this out every time. But
my favorite is when I get asked about my pricing, because my pricing is literally all on my website and it's spelled out in great detail. And I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to email you the page directly copied from my website if that will be helpful for you.
Oh, I do that. I just have a quick link on my phone now. Just so you can see, I get so many emails about that, and it's like you said, it's everywhere, and I don't know if it's just, I don't really get that workflow. I wish that my mind worked a little more to understand some of that stuff.
I'm all about being transparent and upfront with people because I feel like I always want to know what I'm getting myself into, and I give people the same courtesy. So if you need to know anything about me, it's probably on my website. And so most of the time people do come to me after reading the website and they talk to me like they know me already, which is a little weird, but it's great because I know that they did their homework.
Absolutely. Do you feel like the people that are booking you are really invested in that and have done the research?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I have such quality clients. I have to brag. My clients are really awesome.
What is it, would you say, that makes an Irene Jones client? I know we talked a little bit about kind of, not ordinary stories, but more normal stories. But what do you feel like makes a client, special for you?
I think people that are willing to be authentic are my favorite because they're willing to be vulnerable a little bit. A guy who's not afraid to cry during the first look, or, a father of the bride that gets really mushy during their first dance. That's the stuff I'm looking for because I don't want to go too sad on you, but you're going to lose these people. We lost my father-in-law a couple years ago, and some of my favorite moments are him being vulnerable and being authentic. And he was that type of person that never really wasted time. He told you how much he cared about you. And that is something that will always stick with me, is knowing that I knew how much he loved me and my husband and our kids. And I've got pictures of him proving it. And I think that we don't have enough time in this life to waste with the veneer. We should just be authentic.
No, I think that's a great point. I do think that, like, especially spending like a wedding day with people, you really do kind of get a good snapshot kind of into them as a couple, but then obviously them as well, and seeing the families and seeing, the people that are so, like my bride's mom on Sunday came up right when I got there, gave me a big hug. Thank you so much for being here and doing this. And like, just seeing like how invested people are in everything and wanting it to be, it's a cool kind of experience.
Right. I mean, we go to how many weddings a year, but this is the one big day for them. And it's really important that we honor it that way, because this is really valuable.
Yeah, I was just laughing. Was it last weekend? We showed up and the mom was so nervous. And I'm like, because I'm pretty hectic energy too, but I kind of try to downplay it, especially like the second I walk in, because, I don't want to like, because I can go, but I'm trying to like slow play it. And I was like, hey, I said, so I was like, I'm thinking I'm going to take Lindsay's dress and kind of hang it out front of the building here. Cause there was like this big, huge sign that was like the hotel name, and trying to like get it outside real quick. And she's like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, like what do you think about that? She's like, well, and this is like the mom's talking, and we're kind of sitting there kind of BSing for a minute. And she's like, well, if you're going to go do it, you just need to go do it right now, because you could tell that she was like kind of processed it in her head at that point that like, I'm going to take, I was like, we're going to be fine. I said, we do this, but but I said, but no, but it is tough. Cause like you said, you do this every weekend and they don't. And so trying to kind of strike that balance, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah. I feel like a good thing to do is help people feel like you're in control, you know what you're doing. And at the same time, like, don't give out that panic chihuahua energy, because you can feel it on the inside. You can feel like, oh, crap, we're going to be 30 minutes off and the ceremony is going to take forever, and I can feel it. But you don't show that. You just show the calm exterior and the I'm in charge and we're going to make this happen and it's going to be great. Absolutely.
Yeah, you got to just kind of fake it till you get through sometimes.
Oh, yeah. And it always works out. I mean, it always works out.
It's just their day. I mean, whatever it is, it ends up being that's how it was, I mean, you can plan as much as you want, but ultimately,
everybody ends up married at the end of the day. So we're all good.
Yeah. Talk to me about the philanthropy part of kind of you and your brand and kind of the work you do on that.
Yeah, so after my spleen rupture, I did a lot of thinking. I had 3 months on the couch where I couldn't go anywhere. And I was thinking, what was the point? What's the point of doing all of this work and spending all of my time and energy in it if it's not for something that actually makes the world better? Because I figure if I've got another shot, if I get to stay around, then I want the world I live in to be a better one when I'm actually ready to leave it. So I thought about, how can I do that? How can I combine what I love, which is, this artistic medium, and oh gosh, I gagged a little in my mouth when I said that. I don't want to sound pretentious, but what we do is a form of art. I'll get over that someday. Edit all of that out. What was I saying? Okay. So yeah, I wanted to come up with something that blended my desire to put something good into the world with the love of the work that I wanted to do. And I thought, this is a way to do it. If I give back to charity, then I feel like I'm not only able to justify working hard on the things I care about, but I know that that'll attract clients that have the similar heart, that want to also help and also feel good about it. So at the end of the year, I always take a look back at where we're at, and I pull money from profits of every single wedding, and we donate that to charity. We've been doing it since 2012, and I've donated close to $30,000 now.
Do you, what do your clients think when they kind of hear about that?
You know what? I haven't had someone say that's stupid. Most people seem to like it.
Talk about kind of the different organizations that you help support.
I really believe in helping people help themselves. And so I volunteered and worked with the Cocoon House in Everett. That's an organization that helps homeless teens get back into school, get back into, a home, obviously, reconcile with families whenever possible, and get them moving forward in their lives. I also have worked closely with the International Refugee Committee, or the IRC. There are a lot of people that are looking to bring the good and the love that they have in their own family here to the United States and escape a lot of trauma from where they've come from before. And the IRC helps people come to this country that have received refugee status and gets them in a home, helps them find work, teaches them how to use the bus system, teaches them the language if necessary. So it really helps them assimilate into the culture and become a member of the community that they want to be a part of.
That's awesome. I think that's obviously awesome, but that's, I think it's so unique and part of your story, and obviously kind of going through what you have and with your family and making that decision, I think is awesome and is really cool.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Do you find, I don't hear about that a lot I don't know if anybody else I can think of that does something like that.
I don't know if individual vendors do. I know that there's organizations like Brides for a Cause that does stuff like that.
Yeah. But on the kind of like on the individual basis. Before I let you go, what is one thing you wish that more people knew about you?
Oh gosh, I wish they knew less about me. Can we do that? I am such an oversharer. Okay, well, there's a certain person who wants me to swear on your podcast. We joke that because I'm Mormon, I'm LDS, that I don't swear, that I don't know how, but I tell him I have a potty mouth. So as far as I go in swearing, because I am, a Christian girl, is like saying holy mother forking shirt balls. So that's something you can know about me.
That's awesome. We'll see if that certain individual makes it this far. I know he listens to every podcast.
That's great.
In its entirety from start to finish. So we'll see if Mr. Manning has made it this far in the podcast. This has been so delightful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing and sharing your story and just kind of about you and I think it's so great, and I think people you're one of the ones that I think people see a lot and other photographers too. And I think it's so nice to have them come on and kind of share just a little bit about makes, who you are and kind of a little bit about your story. I'm sure we could do many hours kind of getting into all the nitty gritty, but I want to appreciate you for coming on.
Thanks, Reed. I really appreciate you having me. This was a fun conversation. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, it's been good. If you want more people to obviously find out more about you and your photography and philanthropy, and I can never say that word, but anything else, all the wonderful work that you do and your wonderful photography, where would you have them check out?
Visit my website, visit ijphoto.net. My company is IJPhoto. A lot of people think it's Irene Jones Photography, but it's just ijphoto.net, or you can find me on Facebook, same thing, or I'm on Instagram at IJPhotoStudio.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much. And I will, hopefully it won't be another 6 years before we do another wedding together. So
yeah, hopefully not. Take care.
Hopefully not. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. If you are like Irene and are interested in coming on the podcast, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. And I have a nice, easy questionnaire that you can use to submit your information and hopefully get going on getting on the podcast. So Irene, thanks again. I hope you have a good day. And this has been another episode. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.
Thanks.